Hello, I'm Richard Gisbert, and you're at The Listening Post. This week, disunited nations, Iran and the U.S., the showdown at the UN and in the media. Is Osama bin Laden plugging into the World Wide Web? Hillary Clinton gets the political message out.
When I am president.
Again.
Today I'm elected president.
And again.
When I am president.
And again.
When I am president.
And 2 ways to find fame on YouTube.
She's a human!
Both of them shocking in their own way. Welcome back. The General Assembly of the United Nations is the theater for a war of words, a place where diplomacy is at its most public. Remember Colin Powell, Iraq, and what he called proof of weapons of mass destruction? Well, this week, the media went to the UN to watch President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad as he made the case that Iran and nuclear technology should not add up to economic sanctions. Earlier, Ahmadinejad's appearance at a New York university triggered demonstrations and a debate on how far freedom of speech should go in the United States. That's our starting point this week. The Iranian president, the UN, unofficial declarations of war, and where the global media fit in to the diplomatic equation.
Good evening. His country is squarely at odds with Washington over everything from nuclear development to the spread of terrorism to the deaths of American soldiers in Iraq.
Virtually every aspect of Mahmoud Ahmadinejad's visit to New York has come under the microscope.
The evil has landed, screamed one New York front page today, hailing the arrival of one of the more controversial guests on the lecture tour circuit.
The Mahmoud Ahmadinejad show dominated the airwaves and the headlines, and not just in the United States. This was a clash of political agendas and ideologies, Iranian versus American, and the battleground was New York, ground zero for the global media.
Ahmadinejad's entire visit to the U.S. is really one big case study in spin. Everyone is spinning.
His first and foremost objective was to go and sell Iran's case, less so to the world leaders and more to the American public.
President Ahmadinejad, rather than being a victim of the media, for once, he led the media coverage.
It's a photo op for Ahmadinejad.
Sure.
It's a big photo op, and he is in trouble back home in Iran, and this just legitimizes him more.
President Ahmadinejad was in the media's crosshairs long before he got to the UN. His appearance at a Columbia University question and answer session set off loud protests and calls for the school to withdraw its invitation.
I call on New Yorkers to make the life of Ahmadinejad, as he is in New York, miserable. Make his life miserable.
The university held its ground, sort of. The session went ahead, but the school's president used his introduction, which he knew would be beamed around the world, to attack his invited guest.
Mr. President, you exhibit all the signs of a petty and cruel dictator. And so I ask you.
The president of Columbia University, whilst expressing the importance of freedom of expression, as they believe in it in his university or in New York, practically, in my opinion, abused the very freedom of expression by disrespecting his guest and actually scolding him publicly and internationally just in order to score more points in the media.
Perhaps the professor should have just waited for his students' questions. President Ahmadinejad was confronted for repeatedly casting doubts over whether the World War II Holocaust against Jews ever happened. He failed to answer the question.
Right now, there are a number of European academics who have been sent to prison because they attempted to write about the Holocaust or research it from a different perspective, questioning certain aspects of it. My question is, why isn't it open to all forms of research?
His response to a question about the persecution of homosexuals in Iran drew a derisive response.
In Iran, we don't have homosexuals like in your country.
The students were laughing at him, not with him. But back home, Iranians were being told a different story.
President Ahmadinejad went to the Columbia University in New York City to say that the misuse of science by colonial powers has backfired as chemical, atomic, and biological weapons are wrongly used in the world.
Well, if you look at the state Iranian media, they're really trying to have it both ways, to show that he is a progressive leader that is thinking into the future and helping to make Iran more democratic. But as someone who runs a government which is increasingly repressive, it's very hard for him to have legitimacy.
However, elements within the U.S. news media were taking Ahmadinejad and his trip very seriously.
His motive, more or less, is one in which he can tell his people back home that he has been able to say whatever he wants on American grounds. And I think it's a win-win situation for him.
President Ahmadinejad himself is not the typical, stereotypical, black-robed Ayatollah mullah.
They keep saying, 1 minute. 1 minute.
1 more minute.
He's very charismatic, especially in front of cameras, and then he's a leader who reads his audience very well.
Here's another example of that from American television.
But when I ask you a question as direct as, will you pledge not to test a nuclear weapon, you dance all around the question. You never say yes, you never say no.
Well, thank you for that. You are like a CIA investigator.
I think President Ahmadinejad is, in fact, a fairly arrogant person in terms of his view of his ability to command the media, manage press conferences, keep people off balance, and actually say things that people will take seriously without having to say things which would come back to haunt him.
After all the protests, questions, and non-answers, President Ahmadinejad's speech at the UN, which was the basis for his trip to New York and the only reason the Americans granted him a visa, proved anticlimactic. It was as though the media had already spent their energy on the build-up and had nothing left for the event. Diplomacy still matters, but clashes, demonstrations, and confrontation are just so much more telegenic. Our Global Village Voices now with their view on the media's role in the Iran story.
The fact that Ahmadinejad is even in the U.S. is a media coup of its own. The U.S. government had no choice but to grant him a visa to enter the country because he's attending the United Nations General Assembly. His biggest weapon in the battle to win hearts and minds in the media, and especially the Western media, is that he's extremely charismatic. The beauty of Ahmadinejad's charm is that the more the Western media demonizes him, the more his fans increase worldwide.
We see the media engaging in selective reporting that detracts from the useful parts of his rhetoric. They've underreported his concerns about US and Israeli aggression in the Middle East and downplayed his denunciation of war and nuclear weapons. Instead, the media's overemphasized his stupid comments and repeated the same old quotes and misquotes and mistranslations attributed to him. Coupled with sensational headlines and name-calling, this bias aims to dehumanize the Iranian president.
The Western media chooses to use only the negative aspects of Iranian society and to concentrate on portraying Iran as a society where nothing positive is happening in that society. And I think the reason for that is because of the deeply rooted colonial mentality which sees everything in the West, Western values are more superior to Islamic values in particular.
If you'd like to be one of our Global Village Voices, then just email us at listeningpost@aljazeera.net. We're looking for feedback, more opinions on global media, and we'd like to add your voice to the mix. Listening Post News Bites now. The Spanish government has begun broadcasting a hard-hitting ad in West Africa trying to curb illegal immigration. The campaign, which cost $1.4 million, shows images of young Africans who have died attempting the 12-day crossing from Senegal to Spain's Canary Islands. Parents who have lost children tell their stories. And a Senegalese singer, Youssou N'Dour, joined the campaign, encouraging Africans not to risk their lives at sea.
Thousands of families are destroyed. I'm Youssou N'Dour. Don't risk your life. You are Africa's future.
Last year, a record 31,000 illegal immigrants reached the Canary Islands. Another 6,000 people died trying. Hillary Clinton, the front runner in the U.S. Democratic race for president, ran a media marathon this past weekend. Clinton appeared on 5 different U.S. Sunday morning talk shows, doing 5 separate interviews, but the talking points were virtually identical.
It is not government-run health care. This is not government-run health care. It does not create any new bureaucracy. This is not government-run health care. We don't create any new bureaucracy. This is not government-run health care. This creates not a single new government bureaucracy.
Only the lower third of the screen containing the channel logos changed. It was a political tutorial on how a candidate can stay on point regardless of who was asking the question.
I don't condone it. I voted to condemn it. I do not condone and I do condemn. Do not condone and do condemn. Condemned and don't condone.
Our thanks to TalkingPointsMemo.com for putting those sequences together. A Turkish court has done it again, blocking access to YouTube for the second time this year. The court ruled that videos on the file-sharing site insulted President Gül, Prime Minister Erdogan, the army, and the founder of the Turkish Republic, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. Turkey has a law known as Article 301 that makes it illegal to insult what it calls Turkishness. YouTube has said it will cooperate with the authorities to resolve the problem. Reporters Without Borders called shutting down the site a disproportionate measure, a case of overkill. And in Florida, a belligerent university student, a high-profile U.S. politician, and some over-exuberant campus security guards added up to a troubling piece of video that was plastered all over the internet. Andrew Myers got a little boisterous at a University of Florida Q&A session with Democratic Senator John Kerry.
Impeach Bush now. Impeach Bush now before we can invade Iran.
The security guards moved in to throw him out and eventually used a taser to shock the student, which they probably wouldn't have done if they knew someone was filming the entire episode and that it was destined for YouTube.
You're arresting me! What have I done? What have I done? Get away from me, man! Get away from me! Get off of me! What did I do? What did I do? Don't tase me, bro! Don't tase me! I didn't do anything! Ow! Ow! Ow!
Campus security in the U.S. is a little taser happy these days. Last year, an Iranian-American student was tasered at UCLA for trying to enter a library without his student ID card.
Stand up or you'll get tased again. Stand up. Get up. Get up. Get up.
Can't imagine what they do in the case of an overdue book. Coming up after the break, Osama bin Laden, the new media, and the message.